One of my favorite twists on retellings is to tell the villain's story. I love to hear about why the villain is doing what they're doing, and I love to show that we don't actually know what's going on with that villain based on the stories we grew up with, which is why in my Hansel and Gretel retelling, Sugarcoated, I actually tell the story of the witch, and I transform who she is inside of the story that we know, this evil person out in the woods who tricks the kids into her house and eats the kids and all of the things. I turn that to show that it was actually a twisted reality. She was actually working with Hansel and Gretel. She was on the side of the good. And because the villains won, they were able to paint her as this evil witch. So inside of my story, I am taking the witch, and she's actually dating Hansel. She is Hansel's secret girlfriend. They haven't really revealed it to the world yet. And they're working as part of the resistance against the Mad King. The Mad King, of course, is going to win, and he's going to paint her as this evil witch who was murdering people and all of these things, when in fact, that was actually him. And so I love being able to take the twist of, but you don't actually know the villain. And the history books were written by the people who won. Good, bad, or otherwise, that's how the history books are written. And I like to put those new spins on it. So you can look at different villains and write stories from their perspective. What if the sea witch in The Little Mermaid wasn't actually bad? She's always painted as this horrible, horrible sea witch who makes a contract with the Little Mermaid, right? And tricks her into all these things and then turns her into foam at the end. But what if that wasn't the case? What if something else happened and she was actually the hero, but painted as a villain? What happens if she had pure motives for this? What happens if there was a reason? Now think about another fairy tale. What other fairy tales can we talk about? What about Little Red Riding Hood? What if the wolf, the big bad wolf, wasn't actually the villain? What if the big bad wolf was painted as the villain? And maybe Red Riding Hood is the villain. Maybe the grandma is the villain. Maybe something else is that villain, and the big bad wolf was trying to save Red, was trying to do something else. Putting those spins on a retelling is a really fun way to switch the perspective. And sometimes you're going to tell people, like I straight up say, she is the witch. However, she is not bad. She is actually the hero of the entire story. She ends up saving them all and taking the fall for them. You can be very straight up about it. You can also be quiet about it. You don't need to tell people that they are actually not the villain. You can let them discover that as you are writing the story. So coming up with some kind of perspective shift is a really fun way to write retellings. And the inverse is also true. What if the hero is who we're following in this story, but they're not actually the hero? What if we tell it from their perspective? What if we are telling the villain's perspective as if they were the hero? There's a lot that you can do with this. And so looking at asking, of what already exists, what can I switch? What would happen if this person was this instead of this? Gives us a really unique starting point for a retelling, and then you can drop in all those other things and filter in what you need to create that story. So for me, when I was writing Sugarcoated, I said, I want to tell the witch's perspective. I want her to be the hero, but painted as the villain. I want to make people realize that the victors created the history books and they lied. And so my entire thing was to transform our witch into something better, but that could be viewed as not better. So she has powers. She has the gift of illusions. She can create things to trick people who are working against them, and she uses those powers for good. However, if the Mad King comes swinging in and says, but she's a villain and we're going to take care of her because she did X, Y, and Z, which maybe she did, maybe she didn't, that gives us a place to go from. And so then I had to ask myself, okay, well, how is she connected to everybody else? She could be some kind of entity with powers. She could be some kind of like overarching figure, but I wanted to make this YA. And so if she was my main character, if she's my focus, she can't be a full-grown woman in her 30s living in a house in the woods, right? So I have to age her down. And now what? If she's aged down, maybe we age Hansel up a little bit. Maybe Gretel's a little bit younger. In my story, she is. And now how is she connected to them? I'm known for my romance, so of course I wanted to write swoony romance in there, so I connected her to Hansel. She's Hansel's secret girlfriend, and he has to give her up in the end for something. And that is how she sacrifices herself, which is not a spoiler. That's literally the premise of the book. She's going to end up sacrificing herself to save the resistance movement and gets painted as this witch. And so I looked at where I wanted to start. the villain into the hero and how then the outside world could see her as a villain. And then I dropped her into a beautiful sci-fi fantasy type world with lots of technology, and I kind of tweaked how we do like the breadcrumbs in the woods and all the things to form the story. So if you're writing a retelling, even if it is not a full-length novel, if you're going for like a novella or a novelette or just like a short story, you're just practicing, pick a fairy tale, any of them. Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, pick any of them. Now take the villain and make them the hero, but pictured as the villain, and see what you can come up with. Drop your questions on writing retellings, especially retellings where we are going to be twisting up our villains and giving them a whole new life inside of the story that we are creating. And we will continue our discussion on my books, on how to be writing books like this, all those fun things. And you can grab your copy of Sugar Coated everywhere books are sold, because it's a really fun novella read. So it is very short for you to read. It will rip your heart out. It does make you very angry, and it does not end nice. I will be very clear about that. She fails in her mission and she pays the price. Whole premise of the book. So if you want your heart ripped out, this is one of the ones for you. And if you've got questions on this one, go ahead and let me know. It's always fun to talk about my stories. I'll see you in the upcoming episodes as we continue to have discussions on how we can level up inside of the publishing industry.